In this video, we're going to take a look at the expansive history of the iconic New York Philharmonic Orchestra. Today, the orchestra connects music lovers through live concerts, digital recordings, and educational programs. People travel across the country and even from around the world to hear the beautiful sounds of the musicians at events held by this prestigious organization. The featured audio score is George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, as performed by Leonard Bernstein and the New York Philharmonic in 1976. Before going back in time and diving into the detailed history of the orchestra, I would like to give attention to a very important resource the organization has, the Levy Digital Archives. The archives serve as a repository for more than 175 years worth of history. The archives trace the history of the orchestra in its entirety. It is one of the most thorough orchestral research collections in the world. It really shows the organization's ongoing commitment to proper booking, technique, and excellence. Listed here on the slide are different sources that can be found in the archives. If there's anything specific you're looking for or a date you want to research, you can use this tool to investigate. Also shown here is the interface on the official website for searching through the archives. The first time period we're going to look at is the primal days, the earliest days of the orchestra. The orchestra was founded in 1842 by the American conductor Aurelie Corelli Hill. The orchestra was then called the Philharmonic Society of New York. It was the third Philharmonic on American soil since 1799. In these early days, the musicians operated as a cooperative society, deciding by majority vote on such issues as who would become a member, what music will be performed, and who would be the conductor. The first concert of the Philharmonic Society took place on December 7, 1842, in the Apollo Rooms on Lower Broadway, in front of 600 people. The concert opened with Beethoven's Symphony No. 5 and was led by Hill himself. The concert was a 3-hour program including chamber music and opera selections with a leading singer from the day. In the Philharmonic's first 7 years, there were actually 7 different people alternating conducting duties until the 1849 season, where Theodor Esfeld was elected as the sole conductor. Operating the orchestra as this cooperative society proved to maybe not be the best idea. After a string of rather unsuccessful concerts, the orchestra was left in a deficit. Desperate times called for desperate measures, and the orchestra actually looked towards Theodore Thomas, a conductor of a rival orchestra, for answers. The orchestra offered him a role as head conductor and he accepted, and he would go on to work for nearly 14 years, and he played a vital role in turning around the Philharmonic's early struggles. In 1882, the Philharmonic toured the US for the first time ever, and in 1891, the Carnegie Hall opened, and it would remain the orchestra's home until 1962. Next, we're going to look at history from the early 20th century. The early 1900s offered as a period of serious growth for the Philharmonic. To ensure the future stability of the orchestra, Mary Senny Sheldon and Minnie Utenmeyer led a group of wealthy New Yorkers in 1909 in forming the Guarantors Committee. The committee changed the orchestra's organization from a cooperative society to a corporate management structure. The Guarantors also expanded the concert total per season from 18 to 54. The committee also brought in principal conductor Gustav Mahler. The orchestra gave Mahler a medium to be more creative than he had ever been in his career. He would go on to conduct and experiment with new types of music and introduce audiences to his own compositions. Under Mahler, the season expanded, musician salaries were guaranteed, the scope of operations broadened, and the new 20th century orchestra was created. Mahler's successor, Joseph Stransky, would be the first to create musical recordings with the orchestra in 1917. The New York Philharmonic has made more than 2,000 recordings since then. In 1920, the orchestra launched their first European tour. And in 1921, the orchestra merged with New York's National Symphonic Orchestra and acquired Dutch conductor William Mengelberg, who would go on to lead the orchestra for 9 years. During this period, the Philharmonic became one of the first American orchestras to boast an outdoor symphony series. The merger sparked conversations, and it was a hot topic in the community at the time. In 1922, the orchestra began radio broadcasts and is now called the New York Philharmonic This Week. Today, the show is an award-winning series broadcast nationally 52 weeks a year. In 1924, the Young People's Concerts expanded into a full series of children's concerts. The series became the prototype for concerts of its kind around the country and grew by popular demand to 15 concerts per season by the end of the decade. Today, the Young People's Concerts is the longest-running series of family concerts featuring classical music in the world. Now we're going to look into the history of the mid-20th century. Artur Rodzinski was appointed music director in 1943. He conducted the Sunday afternoon radio broadcast, where CBS listeners around the country heard the announcer break in on the performance to update them about the attack on Pearl Harbor. He would also play a lead role in creating a series of recordings with Columbia Records. In the 1950s, Rodzinski's successor, Dmitry Mitropoulos, integrated Philharmonic performances into new areas of media, one being performances between movies at the Roxy Theater, and another being a live television special on hit show See It Now, featuring a behind-the-scenes tour of the orchestra. In 1957, Leonard Bernstein became the first American-born and trained conductor of the Philharmonic. His tenure would prove to be a time of significant growth. He was responsible for the creation of 2 original TV programs on CBS, Young People Concerts, the TV series, and Leonard Bernstein and the New York Philharmonic. The Young People's Concert series would go on to win every award for educational television and make TV history. Bernstein also continued the efforts started by Rodzinski by recording more music with Columbia Records, records that would go on to be remastered and further appreciated in the future. Overall, Leonard Bernstein was very well liked by the community and would prove to be one of the iconic conductors of the orchestra's history. In 1959, the Philharmonic toured the Soviet Union for the first time. Next, we'll look at events from the late 20th century. In 1962, the Philharmonic began performing in the Lincoln Center. This would be a trademark turning point in the orchestra's history. In 1978, one of the youngest internationally known conductors, Zubin Mehta, was appointed director. His tenure was the longest in Philharmonic history, working jobs until 1991. Mehta's successor, Kurt Masur, took over in 1981. Masur conducted annual tours, free Memorial Day concerts, and took the orchestra to China in 1984. This would be the first time the Philharmonic toured Asia. In 1993, the orchestra celebrated its 150th anniversary season. In this year, the orchestra commissioned works by 36 different composers and also made a European tour. On July 5, 1986, an estimated 800,000 people attended the organization's Great Lawn Concert as part of a centennial celebration of the Statue of Liberty. The concert received a Guinness World Record for largest classical concert attendance. Now we're going to look at some of the newer history in the new millennium time period. To kick off the new decade, Loren Mazel made a guest conducting appearance in 2000 with the orchestra. This was after an absence from music of over 20 years. The performance was met with a positive reaction from the community and brought publicity to the orchestra. Mazel would actually go on to become the music director in 2001, nearly 60 years after making his debut with the Philharmonic at the age of 12. As director, Mazel led the world premiere of John Adams on the Transmigration of Souls in memory of those who died on 9/11. In 2003, the Philharmonic made history as the first ever orchestra to make a solo appearance on the Grammy Awards, one of the most watched television events in the world. In the new millennium, the orchestra continued to be a digital pioneer. In 2006, the orchestra made history by being the first orchestra to offer downloadable concerts, and followed this with a self-produced digital recording series. In July 2007, the Philharmonic named Alan Gilbert as its next music director, effective in the 2009 season. He would go on to play an impactful role in developing the orchestra through the new millennium. He would act as director until 2016. In 2008, the Philharmonic performed in North Korea's capital at the invitation of the country's government. The event was the first significant cultural visit to the country from the United States since the end of the Korean War. On May 5, 2010, the orchestra performed its 15,000th concert, a milestone unmatched by any other symphony orchestra in the world. Finally, we're going to look at some of the latest events from the orchestra. In January 2016, the orchestra announced the appointment of Jaap van Zweden as the next music director, effective with the 2018-19 season. He brings a perspective that has been sharpened by world-class musical experience and has been doing a great job leading the orchestra. Just recently, in September 2021, he stated his intention to stand down as music director at the close of the 23-24 season. In September 2016, the orchestra produced its first ever Facebook Live concert broadcast and reached more than 1 million online viewers throughout 3 broadcasts just in that season alone. In March 2020, in response to the cancellation of concerts due to the pandemic, the Philharmonic launched NY Phil Plays On, a portal hosting video and audio of performances free on its website and social media platforms. Even though the 2020 season was tough for the industry, contributions from both personal and corporate sources allowed the orchestra to survive through the pandemic. Total contributions in 2020 surpassed $70 million. The conversation to renovate the orchestra's main hall had been talked about for over a decade. Over the years, The hall has received backlash for being unequipped to compete with modern venues and was falling behind. During COVID, the organization decided to renovate their main hall. Renovation of the David Geffen Hall has since commenced, with a scheduled reopening slated for the start of the 2022-2023 season. The orchestra is scheduled to continue performing concerts at other New York City venues, including Alice Tully Hall, the Rose Theater, and Carnegie Hall. On the weekend of September 17th, the orchestra hosted From Silence to Celebration. This was their first production of the season and the first production since COVID. Now the orchestra is adjusting to having concerts again at normal operations after having downtime from COVID. The New York Philharmonic Orchestra is truly nothing short of a world-class symphonic orchestra. Through their diverse event programming, their attention to fine detail, their ability to innovate, and the prioritization of the music, the Philharmonic shows what it takes to be a successful organization of their kind. If you found the discussed content interesting and compelling, I urge you to read more about the orchestra on their main website or through other sources listed in the description below. Thank you for watching.